You are killing the planet. Not cool. Cutting trees is unacceptable and a crime. Who convinced you to buy such a stupid system? Why'd you go with wood? Why didn't you go with geothermal? Why didn't you go with heat pumps? I've never had so many opinions with anything I've done than I have with this heating system, which is leaking again. So is an outdoor wood boiler system right for you? Maybe, maybe not. But before we get into that, let's break down what it takes to install one and exactly what this heat system costs me here in Ontario, Canada. First, I needed a heating system that could fully support in-floor heating because my home is built on a floating slab, which is above the frost line, which is totally okay as long as you have it engineered properly, and it's better to have in-floor heating to minimize any heaving that might happen from the frost. Planning for this system started all the way back in the building permit and design phase. The wood boiler was fully approved, which is important because not every area allows it, and you need to have it a certain distance away from any property lines. The initial step of hiring someone to design the in-floor heating cost us $105, and this took the guesswork right out of it and made it super easy to install as a DIYer. The boiler was also factored in with any heat loss calculations, and the in-floor heating was designed specifically for boiler systems, whether electric, propane, or wood. Our in-floor heating layout would not work for heat pumps or geothermal heating because those systems operate at a lower temperature, and the in-floor heating loops would require closer spacing to compensate for the lower heat output. Back in 2023, I started the foundation for our home, installing the form boards, the insulation, vapor barrier, rebar, and mesh. And I loved using the mesh panels to tie the foundation together because it also made it super easy to zip tie my in-floor heating tubes directly to the 6-inch grid spacing. The designers spaced my in-floor heating tubes 6 inches apart around the perimeter of the house where heat loss is the greatest, and in the interior they were 12 inches apart. Each room has its own dedicated loop where I can adjust the manifold to reduce or increase the amount of liquid running through to make each room its own temperature. The in-floor heating materials and manifolds came to $1,975. Luckily, I was able to get contractors' pricing, and I borrowed a PEX expansion tool in order to do the test for the in-floor heating before we poured the concrete. In my area, the average cost for professional labor for the PEX tube installation and the pre-concrete pour pressure test is $2 to $5 a square foot. For my 1,300 square foot home, that means DIYing saved me around an average of $4,550 in labor. And honestly, this was the easiest thing to do before concrete. I just followed my plans and I did a pressure test. This $4,550 does not include the installation of the manifolds, the boiler, the backup boiler, the copper piping, and all of the pumps required to run the system. That requires a whole extra level of skill, but for just a few days of work on the in-floor heating, saving $4,550 was absolutely worth it, especially since it truly was the easiest portion of the build before the concrete was poured. As long as you follow the plans, do a little bit of research, I think any DIYer could do this, and you're always going to be able to find a contractor who's willing to do the last step of the work. There was one person who didn't want to work with me because I did my own in-floor heating, and that's completely okay. The next step was running the 1-inch PEX tube and the power from the wood boiler to the maintenance room. Before the concrete was poured, I made sure to put Big O underneath the foundation in order to run utilities into the maintenance room after the concrete was poured. In the fall of 2023, I rented an excavator for a week, but I only spent a day or so trenching and backfilling the PEX. That portion of the rental cost me $425. Using a small ditching bucket, I trenched a 4-foot deep trench underneath our driveway to get below that frost line and all the way to the house. What cost me way more money than I expected was running the 1-inch PEX from the boiler to the maintenance room because it wasn't just PEX. It was 2 tubes, the feed and the return, fully insulated in a 6-inch Big O, which ended up costing $4,070 for a 150-foot stretch. We could have made it a little bit cheaper if we did a straight shoot to the house, but I didn't want to tear up the entire driveway going diagonal. So we just shot right across the driveway so that it's just one section that you drive over. Getting this large Big O and PEX installed was a battle. It was really hard to unravel. And by the time I got it to the house and where the wood boiler was going to be, I had to feed the tubes into the Big O that I had placed. But the Big O that I placed into the foundation definitely wasn't big enough. I would have needed an 8-inch Big O in the foundation. And so I had to take the Big O that was around the PEX tubes and cut it off. Sliding the Big O off wasn't an option because it was glued to that insulation. So I had to take a multi-tool and cut the entire length down the Big O, making sure I didn't cut any of the PEX along the way. Getting that insulated PEX into the house and up this foundation for the wood boiler took absolute brute force. Oh, it's actually going in. Whew.
Every time I get a hit, I end up going 2 steps back. So tonight, I'm just gonna let this one ride. You know what I mean?
Whoa, getting caught in the same spot. One more try with the PEX tube already through the Big O. I definitely cried and broke down at one point before I tried again. And luckily I had my parents help getting it through the foundation for the wood boiler. Looking back, I wish I had installed this in place before I poured the home and the wood boiler foundations. It would have saved so much headache and time. That week I also ordered my wood boiler and Craig picked it up and delivered it for me. Using the excavator, he took it out of the truck and moved it into place while I was on the ground feeding the PEX tubes into the back of the boiler. Craig is always my go-to person and stepdad when it comes to excavator work. I trust him when I'm on the ground because he knows these machines like the back of his hand and like an extension of his body. For the smallest HeatMaster's wood boiler that heats up to 3,000 square feet, the wood boiler itself cost me $11,250. Most people who buy their wood boilers install their own because it's just in the nature of someone who owns a wood boiler. If you're the kind of person to split all this firewood and load it into the boiler morning and night, you're most likely the kind of person willing to learn how to install it as well. If you were to hire this out, you would need to hire out an excavator operator, put the wood boiler in place to do the trenching and to roll out the PEX. This would at least be a day of work, and in my area, excavator operators charge their clients out around $150 to $250 an hour, and considering this would take a full day's worth of work, it would cost around $1,600 in labor. So I'm thankful for Craig to come out and help me, and also because he taught me how to use an excavator, which came in handy for trenching the lines to the house. When the wood boiler arrived, Randy the seller from Drake Industries, he's linked in the description below, already had my circulation pumps and pipes installed in the back, which I was not expecting. Those parts, the chimney flute, and some miscellaneous parts came to $1,500. And the last piece of the puzzle was setting up the maintenance room, installing the manifold, the thermostat and circulation pumps, all of the copper plumbing, and the backup electric boiler. In my area, having an on-grid backup heating system is essential for getting a mortgage and for most insurance companies. Because what happens if the wood boiler stops working and 5 days later you have no heat? Plus, it's going to be more difficult to sell your home because of that. In my area, most mortgage companies will not finance a home if it's completely off-grid. At first, we considered a propane backup because it has cheaper long-term costs to run it, but I just couldn't justify spending $22,000 to $24,000. Why would you pay that much for a fallback option? So we looked at an electric backup system instead. Baseboards aren't really an option because we want to be able to heat the in-floor heating to minimize slab heaving, and since our in-floor heating system was designed for boilers and not heat pumps or geothermal, we went with electric. For the electric boiler, the installation, copper tubing, circulation pumps, and even finishing off the installation of the wood boiler cost $10,775, a much better price than the propane. That's where Ryan from SMHC came in. Again, I'll link that in the description. He did an outstanding job of turning my maintenance room into what looks like a beautiful piece of art. He patiently walked me through every step of the process, letting me use the expansion tool to install some of the manifolds.
Not bad.
Do I need to be a little bit smoother?
No,
so
no,
it doesn't
no,
get
no,
like...
no.
Okay.
No, that was good.
Okay, cool.
So if you find that they're closing too quickly,
Yeah.
just expand it a few more times. So you're going 6,
Okay.
go like 8 or 9.
Okay.
A little easier.
Yeah. I was even able to use the copper crimp tool. Cool.
That's it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It was fun pretending to be an HVAC tech, but Ryan did all of the work. And I found it fascinating that his job kind of combines 3 different trades: low voltage wiring, plumbing, and of course, HVAC. As he installed the system, I took on the high voltage wiring as that permit's out in my name, installing the double pole 40 amp breaker for the electric boiler, the 20 amp breaker for the wood boiler, and the 15 amp breaker for the thermostat and the circulation pumps inside. Since I've done most of my home from scratch without a lot of professional help, I truly wanted to install this whole system. Getting the slab heated was a priority, so I hired it out. And I'm so glad I did. And that being said, if I ever built again, I would truly love to learn to take this trade on completely, but I feel like I'm naive in the amount of knowledge you have to have in order to install it. Plus, that crimp copper tool costs like $5,000, so I don't know if that's in the budget. So the glycol will run through the system, go through all of its loops in through the floor, come out a little bit cooler, and back up into the heat exchanger where it will get warm again. These are the circulation pumps for the system. I forget which one is which. I'm pretty sure this one is always running. Let's bring Ryan back to explain this a bit more.
It senses when the water is cooling down. If the water goes down below that point, it'll shut this pump off. This pump is the one that's peeling all the heat out of the heat exchanger here.
Okay.
So it'll shut that pump off so that your electric boiler isn't trying to heat this plate up and send heat back out into the wood boiler.
Oh, okay.
That way it doesn't become a load. This pump is going to run all the time. And our pump down here is just picking up the temperature of the room. Thermostat is doing that and it's communicating through this, telling our pump down here, hey, we need to turn on.
So this temperature sensor tells the electric boiler to turn on if there isn't enough heat coming from the wood boiler. This guy is the air release valve, so if there's any air trapped in the tubes, this guy will basically get rid of the air. The expansion tank also does this as well. So this guy's the expansion tank. This guy is the glycol feeder. It pumps glycol back into the system if it needs more glycol in the system, especially if air is purging out of the system. Glycol needs to fill it back up. In total, my wood boiler, electric boiler, permits came to $30,000. You might be thinking, wow, that's quite a lot up front for a heating system, but how much could it save us over the years? The next best option to heating your home with wood is heating your home with propane. We don't have natural gas. The other option would be oil or electric. And most new home builds do go with propane. We got 2 quotes just to install the propane backup system, and that's not including the in-floor heating. The lowest quote came in at $20,000 and the highest bid came in at $22,000, and that was with the most reputable company. That $22,000 plus the $2,000 in materials for the in-floor heating would have come to $24,000 for our main heating system just in propane. So that's only a $6,000 difference between only having a propane in-floor heating system versus $30,000 for a wood boiler system with the backup electric boiler. Not everyone is going to pay the same price as me. I was able to get deals on certain things just because of the YouTube channel or because people want to help support me as I build my own home. So I was able to get contractors pricing here and there, which was really helpful. It's really helpful having those connections within the trades, which I do think a lot of people building their own homes do have those connections. The average propane heating costs in Ontario, Canada per year is $2,000 to $3,000. If we take that lower average with only a $6,000 difference between the 2 heating systems, I'll have my wood boiler paid off in full in 3 years compared to going with propane. This means after 3 years, our heating costs are practically free, aside from maintenance, which all heating systems have, the chainsaw chains, fuel and oil, and running a log splitter, and the minor electricity costs that it takes to run the pumps, which would be similar for a propane system. You still have have to run the pumps off electricity. A lot of people ask me, why not geothermal? Why not heat pumps? And if I were to have planned for a heat pump system or a geothermal system for the in-floor heating, because again, it requires that closer installation, I would still have to have a backup system for those heat pumps, because even with those cold climate heat pumps, they don't work after -30. And then all of a sudden you don't have heat coming into your home. So it may be a cheaper system up front, but you would still need that backup system, and you're still paying electricity to run the whole system. And for geothermal, that's considered off-grid, so you also require a backup heat system. A geothermal heat pump costs $10,000 to $20,000. Drilling for the ground loops costs $15,000 to $40,000, depending on the depth and the type. And then you need additional holding tanks and miscellaneous costs for around $5,000 to $10,000. And then you have to have that backup heat system for lenders and for insurance purposes. So a geothermal heating system costs $40,000 to $70,000 up front. So the wood boiler, for the amount of trees that we have, made a lot more sense for us. And if you paid for and got your heat system installed before 2020, most heat systems and utilities have doubled in cost. So now that you know the upfront costs of what it takes to install that wood boiler, what does it take to maintain the wood boiler? The electricity costs are really low. Between the circulation pump out here, that one's the most expensive, around $11 a month in electricity costs. The fan costs less than $1 a month in electricity costs, and the 3 circulation pumps inside cost around $5 a month in electricity costs, bringing our total year electricity cost to $105. And that's including heating our domestic water. Then there's the maintenance and the upkeep, emptying the trays, making sure there's not a ton of ash or soot buildup, chainsaw chains, chainsaw fuel, and having space for a large supply of wood outside. This means some manual labor and an occasional investment in tools, but you get cheaper heat in the long run. So that's why we went with wood. But a lot of people ask me questions of why in the heck I would go with a wood boiler instead of going with a wood stove inside, which is significantly cheaper, or why not go with an indoor wood furnace, which can be a little bit cheaper than a wood boiler. And to reiterate, floating slab means I should have in-floor heating for our specific home, but other people don't require in-floor heating and still have wood boilers. So I went to the internet to see why they chose an outdoor wood boiler versus an indoor wood furnace or just a fireplace inside. The main reasons were they can heat multiple buildings on their properties, from their home to their shop or garage, greenhouses, and outbuildings from the same unit, all controlled by their own thermostats. The wood boiler turned on, as you can see, a little bit of smoke. A lot of people love the fact that their wood storage stays outside. They're not bringing in dirt and bugs into a room in their home that is specifically designed for wood storage, costing you more money on the foundation and size of your home because you need to store wood inside. It is not cheap to build foundations anymore. Not cheap to build homes anymore. It's a lot cheaper to throw up a woodshed. Your home will have healthier air quality, it's safer, and especially with the wood furnace, you're gonna do a lot less dusting than a wood boiler outside. You have consistent heat all over your house, especially with in-floor heating. This is something that is not possible with just a wood stove inside your home unless you have ducting for it. Having the radiant in-floor heating means that even if the power goes out and you don't have electricity to run your pumps, your slab is going to be heating your home for days before you see a significant drop in temperature. You can burn deadfall, crappy wood like poplar, and for people like me who have soft wood or mixed wood forests, this is a great option. It's very low cost to run year round, other than if you need to do maintenance. The repairs can be expensive. I'll list some parts here and their replacement costs because I don't know off the top of my head. You can heat your domestic water. So cool. So why not a wood stove? If you're just using a wood stove without any ducting, you're primarily just heating the room that the wood stove is in, unless you have multiple wood stoves in different parts of your home, which some people do, like those beautiful old homes with all the different fireplaces. The heat distribution is not going to be even, which means you're gonna need a backup heat system. For most people, those are baseboards, and that can cost a fair amount in extra monthly fees than what you would usually be spending. I talked to a few local friends who have wood as their primary heat source and electric baseboards as their backups. And it's not crazy, but extra cold months can cost them $50 to $80 more in heat depending on how well their fireplace works, or depending on if they have ducting throughout their home or multiple fireplaces or not. I do think wood stoves can be incredible, especially for supplemental heat, or wood stoves and wood furnaces with ducting. I do think just a standalone wood stove can be amazing for ambiance and for supplemental heat, but for a full home heating system, a ducted wood stove, a wood furnace, or an outdoor wood boiler are the best options for wood heat. The cost of buying and getting a wood stove installed can cost anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, and wood furnace installations cost $13,000 to $17,000 for more of the higher grade ones, and you would still require something like a $5,000 baseboard installation backup in order to be insurable and to get a loan from a bank. And then the difference between the wood furnace and the wood boiler being all of your wood gets to stay outside. You don't have to dust your house as much. And then I can heat any building that I build in the future on my property as long as it doesn't max out the square footage with this heating system that I already have in place. I don't have to install a fully new heating system in a garage or a shed or an outbuilding. But you have to know the cons of the wood boiler too, because it's not just roses and daisies. You have to go outside twice a day to fill it. I like going outside twice a day to fill it. It does burn more wood than a traditional wood stove, but again, you can heat your entire home with it, and you can use the deadfall and the softwoods in it as well. And another con for any type of wood heat is that you're either going to need machinery to be able to bring the wood from the middle of your forest to your system, whether it be a snowmobile, a UTV or ATV with a trailer, or a mini compact tractor. You are going to need something to help you bring the wood back, or you need to order wood and get it delivered, which then brings your heating system costs up. But in our area, it's still cheaper. If you get logs delivered and you bucket and split it yourself, that's still going to be cheaper than propane and electric. And another con is that wood heat isn't necessarily easy on the body, but that doesn't mean that this needs to be my heating system, and I don't even need to own this home when I'm 60 or 70 or whenever, we want to stop using it. But for me, I'm going to want to keep my body moving as long as I can. And for those of you saying you're a tree killer, you're a planet killer, this kind of heat system isn't for everyone, and it's not for every country. We have an abundance of trees here, even on our own property, let alone the province and Canada in general. And you're actually given a tax break on your property taxes if you properly manage your forests, which includes taking down large trees that are shading an entire area to bring up new trees to grow big and strong. Right now, we still have years worth of wood on our property from just clearing our driveway and from clearing the land for our homestead. At the end of the day, no one heating their home with wood is clear cutting their forest in order to heat their home. And a person sitting in their high-rise apartment complaining on the internet does not care more than the person who owns their land and is doing proper forest management on their own land to heat their home. At the end of the day, you don't need to buy a wood boiler. It might not be for you. I'm not affiliated with any brand, but I enjoy the process of bringing in trees, bucking and splitting them, and heating my home with a little bit of self-sufficiency in mind at a cheaper cost. Plus, the wood boiler videos, tree felling, and wood splitting videos tend to do really well on my channel. So I personally get to profit off my heating system, which may make me biased because I enjoy both the wood splitting and the profit, which is absolutely wild. Your support is huge in making this build possible financially just by watching, commenting, and sharing these videos. And I appreciate that a lot. Let me know if you have any questions on this specific heating system down below. Otherwise, I will see you next week.